Hello and welcome once again to the video. In this one, I shall be taking a look, or continuing rather, my series looking at every Grand Prix, Formula One Grand Prix in the 2025 World Championship. I feel like saying that I'm jumping live to the race. And the exact quote, I think, is jumping live to the race now. Basically, that's a quote from James Hunt from the coverage, the BBC coverage of the 1990 Mexican Grand Prix, 35 years ago. When they were actually making the highlights package, because back then you only saw the European Grand Prix live. The ones outside of a sort of 1 p.m. start, the ones that impacted either the early morning or the evening, you just saw highlights. Very small highlights, normally only 35 minutes. They tended to be 35 minutes long. And they were actually making the highlights program for the Mexican Grand Prix in 1990 whilst the Mexican Grand Prix was still running. So it's a bit like Buster Keaton laying tracks in front of a train, if you've seen that old film. And the race got so interesting that they decided to abandon, the BBC decided to abandon creating the highlights film and just said, just jump straight to the last 10 laps. And so there's suddenly a cut, a bad edit cut, where they just cut off the highlights and jump from I don't know, lap 40 or something, to suddenly they jump to lap 60 because they want to show the last 10 laps live because it was so interesting. I won't go into the actual race. I think I might have covered that one in a Grand Prix anyway, but it was a great finish. And indeed, Nigel Mansell curve, isn't it called the Mansell curve or something, on the current layout of the circuit is named after what Mansell did in that Grand Prix in the last couple of laps. Anyway, so that's why I'm saying, now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, why are you saying you're jumping live to the race now? Well, it's just because I tend to use that phrase when I'm doing something very quickly, basically, like laying tracks in front of a speeding train. On this occasion, what it means is that I am recording the video not long after having finished watching the coverage. So I'm not really giving myself a lot of time to sort of think about it. I have thought about it actually quite a bit, but I'm not recording it on the Monday. I'm recording it on Sunday evening, although in actual fact, looking at the clock, it is now Monday. It is Monday morning. But I can't do it during the day on Monday, so I'm recording it now. So I'm jumping live to the race. That was a long preamble, wasn't it? Okay. Right, so what I normally do, as you may or may not be aware, is that I list the finishing order of the 20 drivers, then the top 10 in the Drivers' Championship, and then the rundown of the Constructors' Championship. So let's go, shall we? Let's dive in. Let's move that slightly. I think that is in the best position. Yeah, just moving the lamp. Okay, so this was round 20. Mexico City. The same circuit that held that 1990 Mexican Grand Prix, but it has been changed quite a bit since then. Okay, let's dive in. So, first place. Nice, big handwriting, if I can, and keep that in focus. Oh, okay, there we go. Keep that in focus if I can. Leclerc. Verstappen. Fourth was Bearman. Fifth, Piastri. Sixth, Antonelli. Seventh, Russell. Eighth was Hamilton. Paul Hamilton. Ninth, Ocon. 10th was Bortoleto, wasn't he? Yes. And then we had 11th. Tsunoda, 12th. Albon, I hope you're still in focus, young man. Yes, you're good. Okay. 13 was Hadjar. 14, Stroll. 15 was Gasly. 16, Colapinto. And then the non-finishers, 17, Sainz. 18, Alonso. And then rounding it off, Hulkenberg and Lawson. So up here we have in the championship, look at that. Maybe I was right all along. 357. Piastri. 356. Verstappen. 321. Russell 258. Stay in focus. Stay in focus. Stay in focus. That always reminds me of in Star Wars. Stay on target. Stay on target. I shall stay in focus. Fifth place. I don't know what happened to that dot. I don't know what he's doing. I'll tell you what, look. I'm going to go. Oh, what a recovery. Look at that. Yeah, fantastic recovery, that. 210. Hamilton 146. Antonelli still, isn't it? 97. Albon 73. Hulkenberg 41. And Hadjar 39. Okay, so the constructors we have McLaren, no surprises there. 7 very close between them. Ferrari 356. And then Mercedes 355. Red Bull 346. Dear me, so close. Williams 111. Racing Bull 72. And Aston Martin on 69. Are you still in focus? Yes, you are. Good. Haas 62. Sauber 60. Alpine on 20. Okay, so what did we think of that race? First of all, I'm going to put Russell fastest lap. And I'm going to put Norris. Ignore what they're saying on Sky TV. He hasn't won 7 races this year. Ignore Simon Lazenby and all the captions coming up on the screen. He's actually on 6. Piastri is on 7. Verstappen's on 5. Russell's on 2. So McLaren, therefore, 13 wins now. Mercedes 2 and Red Bull 5. Okay, so, wow, what a race, eh? Let's just dive in. That's a fantastic race to watch. Total domination by Lando Norris all weekend. I never like to say I told you so, but I told you so. I was saying I did sort of change just recently in the last, well, mainly after Zandvoort. I did start to say that I think maybe Norris might not win the title, but only because of his retirement in Zandvoort. If he hadn't retired in Zandvoort, I'd have thought he was still definitely going to win the title, because he's faster than Oscar, and he's shown that all year, and he showed that last year, and he showed that the year before. Lando was just making mistakes in qualifying earlier in the season, which gave easy wins to Oscar because the McLaren was the dominant car. So if Lando was taken out of the picture due to qualifying 6th or 7th in a Grand Prix, Oscar basically just had to get in the car to win the race. Nowadays, it's not that simple. The competition is more difficult. Of course, in Miami, that wasn't a mistake by Lando. It was actually a mistake by Max. He made an error, oversteered or understeered. Oversteered, I think he oversteered into Lando, punted Lando off the track, and Oscar just serenely just drove through the two of them because he had qualified behind them and went on to win the race. So it was all going Oscar's way earlier in the season due to issues that were happening with Lando. At the moment, those issues are not happening, and that's allowing Lando to drive at full pace. Plus, Lando is happier with the car. Not fully happy, but he is happier with the car than he was earlier in the season. So that allows him to perform better, which increases his confidence and decreases the confidence with Oscar. And Oscar has shown that he is not the robot that he appeared to be earlier in the season. Of course he's not, he's human. So it is clearly getting to him as well. I think he can bounce back. He had a very good race, I think, Piastri, in this Grand Prix, but he qualified down the field, just like earlier races where Norris would qualify down the field and put in a fantastic performance, come all the way up and finish sort of second or third, but Oscar would still be out in front, you know. But that, okay, those incidents, that's the big talking point, isn't it? The lap 1 and I think lap 5, was it, those incidents? Lap 1, let's chop through this quickly. Bit of a mess. I have had to make notes because it was so complicated. Okay, for starters, Russell, he can complain about drivers going off at the first corner and not having to suffer any repercussions for that. I think there is this rule, isn't it, that the stewards apply where, or rather they don't apply any rules. And if it's a first corner incident, first or second corner incident, they tend to ignore it most of the time. I mean, they certainly did in Austin in the sprint race, and they did here as well. They tend to ignore it because there's a lot of chaos at the start. But as Russell correctly said after the race, you're just giving a free pass to drivers just to try whatever they want, knowing that they won't get punished. And that's in Mexico in turn 1, cars are always going off at the start. But he can't specifically complain about Max not handing the position back to him, because Max had already passed Russell well and truly before Max then went flying off the circuit, because there was Norris and then there was the 2 Ferraris and then there was Max on the outside. Not Max's fault. It just so happened there were 4 cars all lined up alongside each other. So it wasn't Max's fault, but he did the right thing and he gave the position back to Lewis, but he should not have given the position back to Russell, and indeed he didn't, because he was well clear of Russell. Now, something that irked me a lot was Leclerc. Leclerc was going into turn 1, going through turn 1, he was behind Hamilton. Hamilton had the corner, Hamilton was on the inside, Hamilton was through to second place. Leclerc was out wide, but he had loads of space. He could have ducked in behind Lewis into third place. Instead, I think he got a snap of oversteer or something, or understeer maybe, or oversteer I think it was. That sort of like forced him off the track, and then he just decided to just go for it. He could have got back onto the track. But he decided to just cut across the grass. Lawnmower race, as Russell called it. And he came out miles ahead of Lewis. And there was no suggestion of handing the position back, which I think is terrible. Now, the commentators said, it's because it's inter-team. So, you know, they're not going to complain to the stewards, obviously. Okay, so Ferrari don't complain to the stewards about Leclerc, you know, stealing that position from Hamilton. Fair enough. He didn't steal it. It was a mistake that pushed him off the track, but you know what I mean. So they're obviously not going to tell the FIA or the stewards, look, you know, give the position back. But they should have kept it within team. They should have said something within team. They should have said, Charles, give the position back to Lewis, please. Whether or not he would have done, I don't know. But it was Lewis's position. Charles was only in front of Lewis going after turn 1. He was only in front of Lewis because he went miles off the track. So that was a bit strange. Now, let's go to lap 5. Okay, now what was interesting here, which I thought was very interesting, this interesting thing that I thought was interesting, is that they were showing the lap 1 replay incident with Max driving all over off the grass, on the grass and everything, and chaos and everything. whilst the inset and the top left-hand corner of the screen was showing live play, and it was showing Max all over the grass, twigs everywhere, leaves everywhere, chaos on lap 5, and it looked like the same incident, because a very similar incident was happening exactly the same time that they were showing a replay of the lap 1 incident, and then they jumped live to the race, basically, to just like 1990, to show what was happening between Max and Lewis. Now, going into turn 1, Max went for it. It was a late dive, but I think it was perfectly fine. There was a gap there. He got his car fully alongside Lewis. So, in my view, it was Max's corner. Okay. And Lewis gave him room if you sort of include a bit of the curb, which I think you can on turn 1. So if you include a bit of the curb, then Lewis did give him room. And then as they went around turn 1, Lewis gave Max even more room. But unfortunately, Max maybe understeered. He often understeers when he's overtaking people up the inside. And he understeered and pushed Lewis off track. Lewis immediately came back onto track and was still alongside Max going into turn 2. And then it was the other way around. And then Lewis got a bit of understeer going through turn 2 and pushed Max off the track. Or rather, Max felt there was no way he could continue on the track, and he actually decided to drive off the circuit. So Max then went ploughing through the grass again, and that was what we saw on the inset, just as Max was ploughing through the grass on the lap 1 replay. So Max was going through the grass. He then comes back onto the track just in front of Lewis, which probably annoyed Lewis. I think it was a sort of even Stevens through turn 1 and turn 2. I think it was just good, as Christian Horner always used to say, good hard racing. Although Horner only ever thought that in defence of Max. Everybody else was driving dangerously, but Max, it was always just good hard racing. But this actually was good hard racing. And so I thought it was sort of like honours even between them there. But then Lewis was down trying to get around the outside. I don't know what he was doing, trying to get around the outside of Max going into turn 6. Was it turn 4? I think it was turn 4. I think he was obviously irked. That's the second time I've used that word, isn't it? That's weird. I never say that. Irked. He was obviously a bit annoyed. From his standpoint, even though I think it was pretty level, pretty even Stevens with what they were doing through turns 1 and 2, but each driver probably saw the other one as being mostly at fault. So Lewis was probably a bit annoyed, and that's why he was still hanging in there on the outside of turn 4. Well, he was never going to make that move stick, and sure enough, he went off the track, came back on, and for some crazy reason didn't slow up. He wouldn't have been able to give the position back to Max. He came back on the track about 3 seconds ahead of Max and the others, but he couldn't give the position back even if he'd wanted to, because Bearman, amazingly, had muscled his way past Max. Fantastic performance by Bearman. But Lewis could have at least slowed and lost those 3 seconds that he had gained. And then he would have probably only got a 5-second penalty instead of a 10-second maybe, Or maybe no penalty at all, because he wouldn't have been able to give the position back to Max with Bearman in between. But for some reason, he didn't slow up and his team didn't ask him to slow up, so that was very strange. And that cost Lewis badly. That 10-second penalty punted him down to 8th place. Disaster. But he should have slowed. He got the penalty for leaving the track and gaining an advantage. However, the team told him that he was getting a penalty because of they simply said, the incident with Max. So Lewis then is thinking that he's being blamed in his battle with Max, which he wasn't. The penalty was for gaining an advantage, basically, when he came back on the track. It's a shame the team didn't explain that to him properly. But yeah, all this while, of course, Norris was shooting out in front. What a dominant performance by Norris. Fantastic performance. He's had the speed all year. And at last he's showing what he was showing last year, basically. Piastri is crumbling a bit, as happens to all drivers at certain times. It's horrible timing to be doing it at the end of the season. But it's incredible that Norris is leading the championship despite that horrific retirement in Zandvoort. And Piastri, remember, has not had a car failure, a car retirement yet. They've both had retirements due to their own mistakes. But Norris is the only one that's had an actual car failure. And yet still, he's leading the championship. So well done. Well done, Lando. What did annoy me is people in the build-up to this race and after the last race, people just kept saying, will Max catch Oscar? He's 40 points behind. Will he catch Max? Will he catch Oscar? Will he catch Oscar? And I kept thinking, well, hang on. What about Lando? He's in between. He's only 14 points behind Oscar. It's not just about whether or not Max can catch Oscar. Lando's 14 points behind, having outscored Oscar in the previous 4 races. And there was even a few murmurs from the commentary, and I hasten to add, the supposedly incredibly biased British commentary team were even asking the question, should there be team orders now at McLaren supporting Oscar because he's got a 14-point lead? That question was being asked amongst the commentators, who are clearly not biased towards British drivers. And obviously, what a load of nonsense to even be asking the question. 14 points with 5 races to go, and here we are 1 race later, and Norris is now leading the championship. So, that's just an example of how unbiased the British commentary team is on Sky. Anyway, so back to this race. Piastri was very good. He was very punchy. He reminded me of what he was like in Austria, and also what he was like in Monza when he was fighting Leclerc in Monza. And as I say, as he was in Austria when he was monstering Norris in Austria. This race reminded me of that. He was extremely feisty, which makes me wonder, are the problems that he was having already over? Because he certainly didn't collapse during the race. He was on really good form in the race, Oscar. Put in some good moves as well. A very good move on Russell. Took Russell by surprise, I think, when he eventually got past him. And, I was very impressed by that move on Russell. They might have even touched, but there was such danger there for Oscar that he was going to get taken out. I thought it was funny. Giampiero, is that his name? GP, Max's engineer. It's almost like a comedy sketch when he's on the radio and he's talking to Max and he's got his finger on the button talking to Max. And he's going, Max, everything's under control, Max. Fantastic. You're doing a really good job. We've got your back here. We know exactly what we're doing. Everything's under control. Just keep going as you are." And then GP turns around and says, what strategy is Max on? Max is asking what strategy. What is it? What are we on? A 2-stopper? 1-stop? Is it 3-stopper we're on? Is it 1-stopper? What is it? I don't know what it is. Max asking. And then Max has to say, I can hear you. I can hear what you're saying. Ah, dear, like a comedy sketch. That was quite funny. I've not heard that before, where they've accidentally kept their finger on the button when they've been talking to someone else. I'm surprised it doesn't happen more often, but I've not noticed that before. Oh man, everything's under control, Max. It's all under control. We know exactly what's going on. Oh, Max is asking what's going on. What's going on? What are we on? What shall I tell him? Are we on a 2er, 3er, a 4er? What shall I tell him? GP, I'm still here. Very funny. Oh yeah, I mentioned that, didn't I? About that one. Yeah, so fantastically exciting race. Bearman, fantastic performance. Have to mention him, don't we? He after the race, he said he was lucky to be where he ended up after sort of like the instant on and lap 1 and lap 5. But he wasn't lucky. He had to monster his way past Max on lap 5 after Lewis and Max got together again. And Bearman had to monster his way past Max, stayed ahead of him for a while. Actually, for quite a long time he stayed ahead of him, didn't he? He was pulling away from him. Max couldn't get past him. Max was on mediums, of course, but still, it's Max in a Red Bull against Bearman in a Haas. So, amazing performance by Bearman, and he held on to it. He held on to the good performance, and it's, in a way, it's a shame in the end that he couldn't get 4th place, but couldn't get 3rd place, which seemed on the cards, because early on, or midway through the race, it didn't look like Max was going to get in the top 6, let alone on the podium. So it looked like Bearman was going to get a podium, but didn't happen. Also looked like Hamilton might get on the podium as well. That didn't happen, of course. Antonelli and Russell. This is still it's a bad performance by the team, but it's a good performance by Antonelli. He was ahead of Russell, and then the team let Russell through, probably too late to attack Bearman. But I was impressed with how Antonelli was able to let Russell through without letting Piastri through. And Piastri was about 6.5 centimetres behind Russell when Antonelli let Russell through. So it was very impressive that Antonelli managed to do that, almost like a red arrows manoeuvre, synchronized car swapping. It was fantastic. And then he stayed ahead of Piastri as well. Piastri only got past Antonelli in the pits, in the pit stop, the second pit stop. It was amazing. It was supposed to be a one-stop strategy. All the strategies were saying one stop, either soft, medium, medium, soft, soft, hard, hard, soft, hard, medium, medium, hard. It was all just, every scenario was a one-stopper. And then nearly all of them did a two-stopper in the end. Norris, Leclerc and Verstappen didn't, but pretty much all the others did. Virtual safety car. Oh yeah, I'll mention that. Sort of jumping, I'm jumping right to the end of the race there again, jumping live to the race, but I'll mention that in a moment. Let's just scan down these. Bortoleto did quite a good move on Hadjar. Well, I thought it was a good move on Hadjar, Bortoleto, to take 10th place. But then suddenly Tsunoda and Albon got past Hadjar as well, because Hadjar's tyres were knackered. And I thought, oh, maybe it wasn't such a great move by Bortoleto. Maybe it was just because Hadjar had suddenly gone off the cliff with his tyres. Stroll, pretty invisible again, as was Gasly, as was Colapinto. Colapinto was even invisible, forming up on the grid. No one knew where he was. He did turn up in the end, though, at the back of the grid eventually. I think they're going to have to come up with a rule that says that the cars have to form up within a certain time window, depending on their grid slot, from the moment the pole position guy pulls in, the stopwatch starts, and each place behind has to form up on the grid within a certain allotted time. Because there's been a few races this year where the cars at the front have just been held way too long. Sainz, well, he did Norris a big favour, didn't he, by retiring at the end. Although I didn't see his car, but the commentators were saying, again, showing a massive lack of bias towards British drivers. The commentators were saying that there shouldn't have been a virtual safety car at the end. It should have only been waved yellows. Even though the safety car helped Norris, because it took points off Piastri and Max, the commentary team are still, as ever, being impartial and saying, I don't understand why there was a virtual safety car, because Sainz's car, I didn't see it, but Sainz's car was apparently off the track, not on the racing line, and on the slowest corner on the track. But for some reason, the virtual safety car came out on the penultimate lap, when Max would have undoubtedly got past Leclerc and got 3 more points, and Oscar would undoubtedly have got past Bearman and got 2 more points. So that did help Norris. But if anyone out there is about to say how incredibly lucky Norris is, this doesn't really compete with his retirement from second place in Zandvoort. You know, that's this bit of good fortune here is minor compared to the massive bad luck that he had in Zandvoort. Lawson, he had a problem right at the start of the race, didn't he? Some issue. Hulkenberg, don't know what his issue was, but he's been having problems all weekend. What else? The Mexican fans booing Lando. That's odd, isn't it? What was all that about? Booing is I think booing's okay when it's like individual people booing, but what it often is, it's like it's almost been arranged beforehand, and like 500 people have got together on the day and we're told, right, we're going to boo at precisely this moment. Synchronize your watches. You know, when you get masses of people all booing at the same time, that I think is just terrible. It's like the mob, you know. Now, occasionally you'll hear British drivers. I don't like it when a British crowd or parts of a British crowd might boo Verstappen, or of course when Dutch fans might boo Lewis, or when, very strangely, Mexican fans boo Lando. What is all that about? I'm more than angry. More than being angry, I'm just confused. Also, the Mexican fans cheer on Max. They do realise that it's Max that's in the Red Bull, don't they, and not Checo? I assume they do. I mean, I don't understand it at all. They've obviously got their own strange reason for cheering on Max and being a big support of Max. I have no idea why. If I was a Perez fan, if I was a Mexican Perez fan, I would definitely not be cheering on Max. Not because I would hate him, but because he was the guy who was spanking Perez for 95% of their races in the 4 years that they were together, giving Perez wedgies at most Grand Prix. So why on earth would I be cheering him on? I don't know. And are the Mexican fans booing Lando because Lando dared to challenge Max for a brief period last year? Can they not forgive him for that? I think they were booing more than any Dutch fans would boo Lando, quite frankly. Very, very strange. We do have the strange situation of Brazilian fans being really into Lewis Hamilton, which I always think is slightly odd, considering 2008 with Felipe Massa. But Lewis only ever says good things about Brazil, and he's been given the honorary keys to the city of Sao Paulo, I think. So you could see that that's more explainable. Plus, he's a big Ayrton Senna fan, and he's always had a yellow, or most of the time anyway, he's had a yellow helmet. When he hasn't had a shiny, silvery, purple helmet with stars or something ridiculous like that, when he hasn't had that, he's had a yellow helmet in honour of Ayrton Senna, which is great. So you can see why he's popular, even though it might seem a bit odd because of 2008. You can see why he is popular in Brazil. But I cannot understand why Mexican fans would en masse boo. Not all of them. They showed people who looked Mexican. I don't know if that's a bad thing to say, but they looked Central American, shall we say, in the crowd with Norris paraphernalia, because they were fans. So not all Mexican fans. I hope they didn't get lynched for supporting Norris by the rest of the crowd. But there was certainly a large proportion. To be able to hear the booing en masse, there must be a large proportion booing Lando. Very, very confusing. I don't know why anyone would boo Lando. You might not support him. If I wasn't British, I wouldn't support Lando, but I wouldn't boo him. What's he done to deserve being booed? I really don't understand that. So, what else have we got to talk about? The championship, unbelievable. 1 point, hey? 1 point. I do feel for Oscar, because after Zandvoort, it certainly seemed that his manager, Mark Webber, seemed to think that, well, that's it, championship's done. Mark Webber was bouncing around all over the place. I thought he was on a pogo stick until I saw that he wasn't. He was just literally jumping up and down in the paddock after Zandvoort. Jumping up and down, looking like he was on a pogo stick, whilst at the same time supposedly showing sympathy for Lando. You don't have to show sympathy for Lando. You're pleased that Lando's retired, just as Oscar is pleased that Lando's retired. That's perfectly normal. Don't pretend otherwise. So, so to come from that to suddenly actually now being 1 point behind, but he's not out of the championship, of course. He's only 1 point behind. But Norris is like a machine at the moment. He's very focused. He's not emotional at all. He's clearly had a strong word with himself and told himself to stop being, don't wear your heart on your sleeve, because you're not going to get any sympathy. Whenever he opens up and is a bit honest about himself, all that happens is that he gets grief, because people, for some strange reason, tend to like the aggression of, say, a Max Verstappen. They respect it more so. So there's Max being super aggressive in everything, not just on the track, but just on the way he talks to his team as well. He can't say enough bad things about his car most of the time, despite all the success he has with it. But that gets respected. But Norris doesn't get respected for being open and honest about his failings and things like that. People hate that. They seem to hate that, and that's why I think he gets a lot of grief. This was just a massively solid, strong performance. 31 seconds he won by, which is the second biggest, or the biggest winning margin for 2 years since Hungary 2023, when Max won by 33 seconds. So, fantastic performance. But his detractors will still carry on detracting, probably, which is a shame. But let's see what happens. What an exciting championship. And next up we've got Brazil, which is always an exciting race. All sorts of things happen in Brazil. Right. Okay, so I just gotta look to see, did I have anything else to say? Could be from Oscar on Russia, Champs, Mason, Ketchup, Scout, Lando, Venture Safety Car, Max, Oscar. Piastri, getting the race. Yeah, it was good. Yeah, I think that's okay. I think I've covered everything that I wanted to cover. Yeah, so there you go. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. What time is it? Is it Tuesday yet? No, it's still Monday. Monday morning. Still early Monday morning as well. Right. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to subscribe, please do so. And comment on the video, or like the video, or even leave a tip on the thanks button below the video. But basically, thank you very much for watching. I never fail to be impressed by the fact that, just a simple fan, as I genuinely am, of F1, people actually take an interest in what I'm saying. Okay, so thank you and goodbye for now. I'll see you on the next video.